Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Unless you're new, then hi, welcome to my channel. Today I'm super excited about this video because I've worked really hard on it. I'm going to take my channel down a new direction. It's still going to be TV and film because that is what I'm interested in and love talking about, but it's going to be more commentary style videos. A little bit like my Skins versus Euphoria video, which is the video I am the most proud of all the videos on my channel. But today we are going to be doing a deep dive into being a Disney child star. I was inspired to make this video because I've watched my second mental health documentary by a Disney child star. Both Demi Lovato and Selena Gomez have made documentaries about their struggles and their past with mental health. Weirdly, this has also been a topic of conversation, mainly on like TikTok. I've seen people talking about Bella Thorne and some other little things, which is so weird because I started planning this ages ago, like back in November, and it's become a huge topic. We're going to talk about all the things that I found, from the Disney Machine to the Perfect Image, even to the Jonas Tumblr essay. As a quick disclaimer, I'm also going to be touching on topics that can be triggering for people, which could be like mental health, addiction, eating disorders. I'm not going to go into depth about them because there's no need for me to do that, but I will be mentioning these things just to pre-warn you. I want to start off with the basics, which is overworked kids. This has been a problem with child actors for so long now. TV shows and films are in high demand, but when using children, you can only use them for a certain amount of hours. And for a lot of productions, it's simply not enough time, resulting in exploiting child stars. A lot of productions actually use twins to get around this. Take Full House, for example, when one twin was on set filming, the other one was resting so they could get around the child laws. However, for Disney, they were simply just overworking their child stars. Alison Stoner, a Disney child actress who was in Sweet Life, That's So Raven, was also in Camp Rock. Made a YouTube video on this topic, along with being a huge campaigner when it comes to making sure that kids are not overworked due to her own experiences. She called this the toddler to train wreck pipeline. Alison Stoner actually says that she lost a lot of her childhood due to being a Disney child star, and other former Disney child stars also say the same thing. Take Demi Lovato, for example. Demi Lovato's key advice to wannabe actors and actresses was to wait until you're at least 18, and Symone even wanted to retire by the age of 18, which is crazy. I'm just going to read this because I want to make sure I get it exactly right. In the US, 17 states still have no specific laws for child entertainers, so child actors are only protected by general labor laws. There are child actors in every state. As Alison was explaining, she would do a full day on set. They would respect the law of how many hours she could work, but then they wouldn't put into account the fact that she's then going to go and do some interviews, and then she's going to go do a photo shoot, and then another audition and schooling, and so on. Essentially, she was being completely overworked, and without any guidance or help from Disney, she was just fully thrown into the deep end. Most of these Disney child actors starred in these huge, and I mean massive, TV shows and films from such young ages. For example, Alison had multiple projects by the age of just 12. Miley Cyrus was 13 when Hannah Montana began filming. Selena Gomez was 15 when Wizards Waverly Place started, and age 12 when she was doing smaller roles, like when she was on Sweet Life with Zack and Cody. Dylan and Cole Sprouse were 13 when Sweet Life began, and Symone was 15 when That's So Raven began. So, you know, everyone's really quite young. There's a podcast by two Disney kids called Hit the Break with Stephen Perry, who was on Good Luck Charlie, and Jake Short, who was on Ant Farm. I only know of this podcast because it's actually been coming up on my TikTok recently, where they're talking about their experience with being a Disney kid. So Stephen Perry revealed that actually when they did get paid, 85% of that money went to their parents. and they got paid 15%. Can we just think about that for a second? 85% of that money went to their parents. Of course, you couldn't give a 13, 14, 15-year-old thousands and thousands of dollars, like the whole 100%. You can't trust a kid with that, but 85%? They do go on to say, however, that a lot of families do lift up their whole entire lives to move their kids to Hollywood to be on this channel, not knowing if it's going to work out for them. So of course they are entitled to some kind of pay, but come on. 85%? But on the other side of that, it does show that parents could easily be pressuring or pushing their kids into the child acting world, seeing as they can get up to 85% of their child's work's pay. It's essentially the kids will be paying their bills. There's no secret that Disney creates absolute megastars. We've got Demi Lovato, we have Selena Gomez, we have the Jonas brothers, we have Olivia Rodrigo, we have Miley Cyrus, and so on and so forth. And Disney has this system that some of their stars call the Disney machine. To explain this, I need you to come over with me over here to, I'll explain it when we're there. Hello. And welcome to my wall. Here we have a massive timeline of the Disney machine. As you can see, I don't have coloured ink and it's a little bit wonky. I tried my hardest, okay? So I have come up with the Disney machine timeline to make this a lot easier, not only for me to talk about, but for you to understand it. It all starts here in 1996. This is the Mickey Mouse Club. That's what it's called. This show had 14 seasons, 360 episodes, but in seasons 6 and 7 of this show, there were 4 people that ended up being megastars. We have Justin Timberlake, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, and Ryan Gosling. I mean, it's one thing that they were all on the same show, but the fact they were all in the same episode, weird. But why is this important to the Disney Channel star timeline? Well, they may have come from Disney, but did Disney profit off of them? No, they did not. So the same year that the show finished, Justin Timberlake was in NSYNC and they released their first bit of music. In 1998, Britney Spears released music with Hit Me Baby and became absolutely huge. Christina Aguilera released music in 1999, again becoming an absolute huge superstar pop star. And what do all of these people have in common with their music? Disney somehow missed out completely, didn't make any money from them, have no real claim to their fame other than the fact this is where they all started. Obviously, Ryan Gosling's here. He was there, he's not a singer, so he's just here. So Disney somewhat created these huge stars without getting pretty much any credit for it, which then made the Disney machine. Disney was going to make sure that this situation didn't happen again. Starting with 2001, they started Lizzie McGuire, starring Hilary Duff. Now this show was actually only on for 2 seasons, which doesn't sound right to me. I feel like there was so many episodes. The show was an immediate hit and Disney saw this as the perfect opportunity to make a Britney Spears 2.0 with Hilary. So Hilary released an album with Disney in 2002 which went gold. They then saw the success of that and gave her the Lizzie McGuire movie with its own movie soundtrack which went 2 times platinum. But this, however, was only short-lived because Hilary very, very quickly left Disney to do her own music. She didn't like the fact that this Britney vibe was being pushed on her. She wanted to do a little bit more alternative things. I don't think it lasted all that long though, but it lasted long enough for Disney to know that this Disney machine thing could actually work. Demi Lovato talked about how there's this process when you work for Disney. It kind of goes TV show, album, film, TV show, album, film, all to basically promote each other, and that machine just went on and on and on until they left Disney. So here's the timeline, stay with me. In 2003, we have That's So Raven and the Cheetah Girls, which birthed Raven Symone. Raven was thrown in full force into the Disney machine very clearly by giving her not only a TV show, but her own film as well. However, like Hillary, Raven's music career didn't last all that long. In 2005, we had The Suite Life of Zack and Cody, which birthed a hell of a lot of future Disney stars, including Dylan and Cole Sprouse, Selena Gomez, Ashley Tisdale, Vanessa Hudgens, Zac Efron, and even Arias Moses from Hannah Montana. I used to get told I looked like him as a child, and not sure how I feel about that. But for example, Zac Efron and Vanessa Hudgens, and of course Ashley Tisdale, who was one of the main people in The Suite Life, were on Suite Life just a few months before High School Musical in 2006. So High School Musical came out in 2006 and had its own album, of course, and it went 4 times platinum. However, 2 months later in 2006, Hannah Montana was born, birthing Miley Cyrus. And sometime during this time, the Jonas Brothers were also signed to Disney's record label. But when it came to Hannah Montana, I'm going to make sure I get this right. The first Hannah Montana album went 3 times platinum in only 8 months. The second Hannah album went 3 times platinum in 6 months. And Miley's first solo album as Miley went platinum in just 1 month. Just proving to Disney further that their machine clearly working. The next big thing to happen was in 2007, only a year later, like I'm talking like it was 10 years later. In 2007, when High School Musical 2 came out and it premiered in the US to 17 million people. And I remember the countdown for it, dancing around my living room, learning the dances. I remember it very well. Now, here's the really clever thing that Disney did. High School Musical 2 came out, and after the huge premiere of 17 million people, they put on an episode of Hannah Montana. Now, that's not really exciting. It already came out in 2006. We all know of Hannah Montana. Who were the guest stars and their first appearance on Disney? The Jonas Brothers. This was the first time they were ever seen on Disney Channel, and they were introduced after a 17 million viewer count. But then the Jonas Brothers went on to release an album. They covered the year 3000. Can I just say they covered the year 3000, thank you. And they very much grew to fame very, very quickly. 1 month after this, Wizards of Waverly Place was born, and so was Selena Gomez. Even though she'd been part of The Suite Life, she was also in, I think, Hannah Montana as a singer as well. They really kicked off her career a little bit slower than other people. And then going into 2008, we have the birth of Camp Rock, and the first time the Jonas Brothers were on screen, but also introducing Demi Lovato. But because Camp Rock went down so well, and so did the Jonas Brothers and so did Demi, that meant that the Disney machine carried on, and what did they get? Their own TV shows. Demi Lovato was given Sonny with a Chance, which, by the way, was one of my favourite programmes. I actually rewatched it last year because I really enjoyed it. And we have Jonas. Questionable. During this time, Demi released their own solo music with a Don't Forget album, which is a banger, and also featured La La Land. I still listen to it to this day. I love it. So, during this time, Disney put their little thinking brains together and they went, do you know what would be absolutely perfect? Let's put Demi Lovato and Selena Gomez, best friends at the time, by the way, into their own film together, which made the Princess Protection Program. I never really got into this film, I'm going to be honest with you. I wasn't really that big of a fan of it. I mean, it really worked. It promoted their music. It promoted the new show. Obviously, Wizards was still on, Selena's music. Also, during this time, the Wizards of Waverly Place movie came out. So again, more promotion. And that had 11.4 million viewers. But I would say this is the last major thing Disney did before the generation of viewers grew up. In 2010, they released Camp Rock 2, The Final Jam. This wasn't as good as the first one. However, still watched it because it's Demi Lovato. And they also released Shake It Up, which was the last, I would say, of my generation's Disney's show that I actually watched for a bit of it. But this created 2 stars. This created Bella Thorne, but also obviously Zendaya, who has gone on to be the most successful actor out of all of the people in Disney, surely. And in this kind of time, there's loads of other shows like Ant Farm, Jessie, Good Luck Charlie, Austin and Ally, like all these shows I probably watched 3 episodes of because I grew up. But then we make it to the present day. Well, not quite, it's 2019 now. 2019, we're in 2023, but still, it's the present day. And we have High School Musical, the series, which has birthed Olivia Rodrigo. You might be thinking, why is this outlier here of 2019, 9 years after their last proper huge successful TV show or film or actress or singer to come out of the Disney machine? Well, the reason that is here because we have come full circle. Don't know if you remember earlier, talked about these lovely people down here. We got Justin Timberlake, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera. Disney didn't make any money off of their music. They've only done the same thing. So like they did in 1996, they've done the same thing in 2019, not profiting off of maybe one of the most successful singers currently, Olivia Rodrigo. However, does this mean that Disney will start up the Disney machine again from learning from their mistakes a second time many years later? I hope you stayed with me there. I know there's a lot more shows and films and music that came out through these times, but these are mainly the most important ones of the Disney machine. Most of the stars simply grew out of Disney, as we did as viewers as well. However, something I can learn from this timeline is the Disney machine clearly does work. I mean, pretty much all of these faces that you can see have gone on to have really successful careers, whether it's in music or acting. But the thing is, with all this success going on for these really young people means it comes with a lot of pressure, and more pressure than I think I could ever handle. Although a lot of these shows and stars were a huge part of not only my childhood, but thousands, if not millions of other children around the world, that comes with a lot of pressure, especially on children themselves. No matter what Disney child star, no matter what interview, they all somewhat say the same thing about this insane pressure to be perfect. Miley Cyrus, who I'm sure you all know of, she was on Hannah Montana, where when she's Hannah Montana, she's this really, really famous pop star and everybody adores her, and when she's Miley, she's just an ordinary girl. Miley talked about how this was playing 2 different characters, saying, talk about identity crisis. I was a character almost as much as I was myself, and actually the concept of the show is when you have an alter ego, you're valuable, and then you didn't have the wig on anymore, and nobody cared about me. So that then does a lot of psychological stuff where it's like, am I valuable to myself? I also read how it affected Miley in her day-to-day life, where if she was Hannah Montana and she was meeting fans, they would go absolutely crazy, crying, you know, the whole big fangirl thematic. But if she was Miley, just being herself, they were like, it's Miley, which is so weird because it's the exact same person. So when it's drilled into you as a child that being yourself simply isn't good enough, of course that is going to cause a massive, and I mean a massive amount of anxiety and self-confidence issues. Disney were drilling into their child stars that they had to be this perfect role model. Miley goes on to say, but when they go and kind of groom you to look like something else, something you're not, and you're really young, and it's a lot of makeup and wigs and all this stuff, it does something psychologically. Of course, after Disney, Miley had her wild phase. We've all seen that video of Miley Cyrus on stage with that foam finger, the wrecking ball video, etc. I do, of course, think this is slightly to do with this insane pressure to be perfect and wanting to break that mold and taking on like this different person so you can feel more important, like she's been taught with Hannah Montana for all these years. But I do also think this was a really, really clever way of breaking the Disney mold, and I think a lot of it was done done on purpose. Because apparently, reading up on everyone, this was a very common theme as well of this, once you're a Disney kid, that's it, you are stuck being a Disney kid. Some of these actors would go to auditions and wouldn't even get callbacks simply because they were from Disney. Bella Thorne, for example, who was on Shake It Up, she used to go to auditions, and when they were told no, she would ask why, and they said, well, you're on Disney, to the point where she had to pretty much force her way into the audition room to be like, I'm reading for this part. In Shake It Up, I remember Bella Thorne's character not only being a dyslexic queen, but she was always in this constant competition with Zendaya's character, which ended up actually being the same on and off of camera. This is quite a harsh thing to do to these kids. I mean, they're really young, they're probably already comparing themselves to each other. Bella also said, I was told to be a very different person than I am, which adds back to Disney trying to make Miley into this Hannah Montana pretend figure. These children were made to fit this Disney mold rather than being themselves, which is then later on showing these child actors grown up and doing whatever they want and maybe acting out in certain ways because they weren't allowed to say or do or look like how they wanted to. Although there was this pressure from Disney to be this completely different person, Bella Thorne was actually one of the first people to make a name for herself because she was one of the first Disney stars to have a following on social media. And because of this following, Bella actually was possibly going to get fired for posting a bikini picture, which is absurd, by the way. But because she had so many followers, she was too valuable that they couldn't get rid of her. Because in the past, Disney would drop some of their stars because they simply did not follow the rules or be part of the Disney mold. But with social media on the rise, it was a lot harder to be able to ditch some of their stars because they had this incredible following. And Demi Lovato actually said that the pressure to be replaceable was always there. So these Disney child stars knew that they had to comply to what Disney was saying, otherwise they could possibly be dropped. However, Demi Lovato is a slightly more complex person because whilst Demi was on Disney filming Sonny with a Chance and Camp Rock, they were actually suffering with mental health and addiction. I personally love Demi Lovato. I've always been such a huge fan since I saw them on Camp Rock on Sonny with a Chance. I've always been a big fan, listened to their music, still to this day. Big fan over here, big fan. I won't go too deep into Demi's story because obviously this is a really difficult topic and I'm not qualified enough to talk about it. I don't know them well enough, but I do want to touch upon a few things that I found out. I believe, as far as I'm aware, that Demi is actually one of the only stars to talk openly about their mental health whilst on Disney. Later on, once Demi had left Disney, there was a very controversial scene that was on Shake It Up, where they are in a modeling agency and the agent says,
I could just eat you guys up. You know, if I ate.
Why Disney put this in? I don't know, but obviously Demi Lovato was very angry by this, as I think most people were as well. This went completely viral on Twitter, saying, I find it really funny how a company can lose one of their actresses from pressures of an eating disorder and yet still make jokes about that very disease. Demi, out of all the people that I looked into, I think gave the most insight in being a Disney kid. They touched on how overworked they were. Demi was 15 when they filmed Camp Rock and 16 when they filmed Camp Rock 2. Not only that, but Disney threw at them albums, tours, films, and their own TV show as well. I would have people over for meetings in my lunch breaks because that's how much I worked. I was miserable and angry too because I felt like I was being overworked. During this time, Demi was also suffering with addiction, saying, if you work me like an adult, I'll party like an adult. And Disney explained to them, if they don't, become part of the Disney mold, then you're out. And Demi's response to that was, great, there's my way out. Which is so heartbreaking. And on an even tougher note, they reported to Disney that they were taken advantage of by a co-worker. And guess what Disney did? They did absolutely nothing, meaning that Demi had to keep working with this person. They were just walking around unpunished. Demi finished Sonny with a Chance so they could go to a facility to help them. Sadly, they did have quite a bad overdose, But currently, they are doing well. They say they are clean. Of course, I'm not saying Disney is the sole reason for all of these things happening, the mental health, the drug abuse, the etc, because I'm not looking for a lawsuit. But being a Disney kid probably did not help with a lot of these things. On a slightly similar experience, Raven from That's So Raven has been very, very open about their Disney experience, especially when, once again, it is all about being this perfect Disney kid, this perfect role model. Raven actually wanted to retire from acting by the age of 18 because they were miserable. She explained that Disney would control the way she looks, what she's wearing, what she could say, who she could be, and the only thing that they didn't control was her food, which developed into a problem for her and her eating. Realistically, a company, any company, should have their employees as #1 priority. Whilst Disney was sending the Cheetah Girls off to do a tour, sadly Raven only did a few shows. And Raven explained in a video that apparently she was too big to go on tour. Which of course we all know is just not true in any way, shape or form. One of the biggest things for Raven is she felt like she couldn't come out because being a gay black woman wouldn't fit the Disney mold. Raven, since Disney, has come out and actually ended up back on Disney with their own show once again. It's a spin-off of That's So Raven where it's her and Chelsea raising their kids, which I think is a really good idea. But I was surprised that she's back at Disney, seeing as she didn't have the greatest time when she was there from the interviews that I watched of her. But does that mean that things at Disney have possibly changed? Other Disney kids have explained briefly what it was like being a Disney child star, like Ali and AJ, who made some absolute bangers, by the way. They said, "We had experienced so much as kids, and I kind of felt like we learned a lot about the industry, and it put a bad taste in our mouths." An actor I think a lot of people forget came from Disney is not a very good man, but I do want to mention this because it is Shia LaBeouf. He was on Even Stevens at the age of 14. Apparently he started doing exposure therapy because of how traumatic it was being a child star. But what I didn't know was Even Stevens actually finished because Disney simply didn't want to pay their actors more money. They were actually required a raise, and Shia LaBeouf said Disney wasn't trying to pay salaries like that. I know it's Disney Channel and they probably didn't have like the most amount of money ever, but it's Disney, you know, it's Disney. I of course need to talk about Selena Gomez and their documentary because that is literally one of the reasons that inspired me to make this video. Both the Demi documentary and the Selena documentary don't necessarily talk about Disney as such, but they do mention little drips and drabs. Demi's actually made a few documentaries and I've watched every single one of them, I'm not gonna lie, but their most recent one was a real insight into what they're dealing with. Selena's was also very interesting, but in a different kind of way. I really loved Selena since the Disney days. I was obsessed with her on Wizards of Waverly Place. It was one of my favorite shows. And I've enjoyed some of her music before, so this was an insight to know her a lot more because I feel like I knew the very old Disney day Selena, but I don't really know what Selena's like now. But the documentary was really raw, really real. I also really appreciated the fact that she left in some clips that probably don't put her in the best light, but it's just, you know, being a human. In one part of the documentary though, Selena was being asked questions. They're really, really good questions. And once Selena says her answer, the interviewer says, "That's good for me," which Selena took offense to and vented to her team, saying,
"You know what it is it made me feel like Disney. I just like, I've spent years of my life trying to not be that. I fucking look like a witch. The outfit doing it all, like the wand again."
But Selena also talks about how she doesn't like being associated with being a Disney kid. "I still live with this harrowing feeling that people still view me as this Disney girl." Little bit ironic. I'm making this video about being a Disney kid, but I actually don't really see these people as Disney kids as such. Obviously, I see them as people that were on Disney and a huge part of my childhood and when I was growing up, but when I see them now, I don't immediately think of Disney anymore. I understand why you'd want to stray away from being known as the Disney kid because as you grow up, you want to be taken more seriously in your field. You aren't that kid anymore. You're 30 years old. I felt like it was very difficult for people to take me seriously. I've slowly pushed through that and I'm really glad. I felt like a joke, you know. In this documentary, you also see Selena constantly feel like that she's not good enough and needing validation from the people around her. This could very much come from the time that she worked at Disney and needed to be this perfect role model child. I think it's really dysfunctional to be in this industry at a young age, where you're still figuring out who you are. It was my job in a way to be perfect. You're considered a figure for kids to look up to, and they take that seriously there. Out of all the people I've talked about, I feel like Selena has broken out of this Disney mold without having a wild phase. But I feel like instead of outwardly, Selena has dealt with it more inwardly watching this documentary, with this pressure, this insane pressure on themselves to be perfect, along with the anxiety that they now have. When I got older, I started to become exposed to the truth behind some stuff, and that's when it really flipped a little bit. I realised that, oh, this is actually really hard and kind of slimy in certain areas, and didn't realise that certain people wanted certain things from me. My confidence went through a lot with that. But since Disney, Selena has a huge, and I mean massive, music career, along with coming back into acting with Only Murders in the Building. And not only that, but she's one of the most followed people on Instagram. But out of all the people I looked into, Dylan and Cole Sprouse seem to have had the most smooth sailing ride through being a Disney child star. Dylan and Cole Sprouse were on Disney, specifically the Sweet Life either of Zack and Cody or Sweet Life on Deck, up until the point where they could go to college, and that was their plan, to go to college to get their degrees. But they had this idea for a spin-off to almost help Disney later on be able to carry on one of their most popular shows. They explained to Disney that they would only carry on with their shows if they could have more of an input when it comes to directing, producing, writing. I mean, it's understandable. They're going to be, I don't know how old you are in America when you go to college, 18, 20? Around that age, of course, you're going to start thinking about your actual long-term career at that point. So getting that on the CV, whoa, that looks good. They went to Disney with the idea that they would go back to the Tipton where it all began, and this would be like that period before they go off to college. So they'd be back at the Tipton and there would be this kid that they can teach to be like them, playing the pranks, you know the drill if you've watched Sweet Life. So that when they do end up going to college, because they planned that their characters one would go to college, one would go into working, so they could carry on this series with this brand new kid that they've set up. Now Disney said no to this, and they were like, yeah, whatever, we'll go to college. But then they got a call from Disney saying, hey, we've got a really good idea and we really want you to be part of this TV show if you're interested. And they were like, you know what, we'll listen. We'll sit down, we'll listen to your pitch, we'll see what it is. Just, you know, curiosity, you may as well just have a listen. And Disney pitched them the same thing back to them, like almost identical, other than the fact it was just in a different state, and that when the twins would leave the show so they could carry on with this new kid, they would have slightly different jobs. And the real kicker of it is that they weren't going to be producers on the show either. So of course, Cole and Dylan completely turned this down. But since Disney, they did actually go off to do college. Dylan does more low-key films until recently. He's been an after.
Hey hon, good to see you. How you doing?
Fucking Trevor. And Cole is obviously in Riverdale.
In case you haven't noticed, I'm weird. I'm a weirdo. I don't fit in, and I don't want to fit in. Have you ever seen me without this stupid hat on? That's weird.
But that was all I could really find on the Sprouse twins. They seemed very happy with their experience with Disney, but I am going to talk a little bit about Dylan a little bit later on. Back in 2013, Joe Jonas wrote an essay called My Life as a Jonas Brother. Now, I had no idea this existed until I looked into this, but reading this essay, there was a lot of Disney insight. I mean, it was a full essay. I'm going to go through this bit by bit. Of course, I'm not going to read you the whole thing because that would be ridiculous, but this did cost me $1. So I hope you appreciate it. He starts off the essay with how they grew to their fame. They signed to Disney and their first album had songs like SOS, Hold On, and of course, the year 3000. Joe actually explained that they didn't want to record this, they were made to record it, and it ended up blowing up, making their career a thing. They went from being support acts, to headlining half theatres, to full theatres, to half arenas, to full arenas, in the span of 6 weeks. As they grew to fame, Disney gave them Camp Rock, which of course just made their fame even bigger, and in true Disney form, that then meant that they could give them their own TV show, Jonas. I watched some of this show. I mean, it was a little, not out of my time, but I wasn't very interested. It was a little cheesy for my liking. It was maybe one of the worst Disney Channel shows that I watched, and Joe Jonas actually agreed with this, saying, but the thing about the show was that some of the writing on it was terrible. Some of this essay is a little woe is me. It comes across a little please feel bad for me over things that aren't even that crazy. Like, he goes on to say that he had to shave because he had to look 16 rather than 20. That's the thing actors do. He goes on to talk about Vanessa Hudgens quite randomly, I feel like. He says, we were working with Disney in 2007 when the Vanessa Hudgens nude photo scandal happened. We heard that she had to be in the Disney offices for a whole day because they were trying to figure out how to keep her on lockdown. We'd hear execs talk about it and they would tell us that they were proud of us for not making the same mistakes, which made us feel like we couldn't ever mess up. We didn't want to disappoint anyone. Our parents, our fans, our employers, so we put incredible pressure on ourselves, the kind of pressure that no teenager should be under. Few things to unpack here. Firstly, for Disney to come up to one of their stars and say, well done for not making the same mistakes that this person's done, is kind of really messed up. No company should be going to their other employees and talking about this huge awful thing that happened to someone that wasn't even under her control. She was taken advantage of and Disney went up to the Jonas Brothers and said, good job, lads. But also, I'm not sure why Joe mentioned it. I feel like it's a little like, look how good we were. But I do understand why something like that would absolutely terrify you. He carries on to talk about the insane pressure that they felt from being with Disney. Still talking about their TV show, he says, we went along with it at the time because we thought Disney was our only real shot and we were terrified they could be taken away from us at any moment. When I was looking into Miley, she kind of had the same thing of this fear of feeling like she needed Disney to be successful, because when she finally went off on her own and Can't Be Tamed came out, it didn't do half as well as the albums and singles that she released when she was with Disney. So Disney would say, hey, see? You need us. Spoiler, she doesn't. But when you are 18 to 20 years old and you see this insane success from this company and you finally go off on your own, of course that's absolutely terrifying. He then goes on to talk about the notorious purity rings that the Jonas Brothers wore. I don't know how many of you will go, the purity rings. I remember that. Now, this one interviewer persistently asked them about it, which then got everyone looking at these rings because no one cared before. And then he goes on to explain that every relationship they then had was all around these purity rings. And then he goes on to talk about how none of them stuck to the rings anyway. And he gave me way more information than I ever wanted to read from him, to be honest. He then goes on to say, because of our age, because of Disney, because of those rings, there were so many things throughout our career that we had to sugarcoat. If a lyric was slightly sexual, someone at the record company would tell us to change it. Later on, he wrote a whole solo album without the other two Jonases. He was also still at Disney at the time, so had to show Disney. They said, no, the only way you can release this is if you let our own Disney songwriter to rewrite some of the lyrics because they were too sexual. I mean, I get it. Disney is mainly for children, especially Disney Channel and their fan base as well, and Disney have this brand to protect. They don't want a lawsuit on their hand because Joe Jonas wants to get down and dirty. The last thing of interest that he said in this essay was, being part of the Disney thing for so long will make you not want to be a perfect little puppet forever. Eventually you hit a limit, and I think that happened to a lot of us. Now, when this essay came out, there was a lot of other Disney stars that were reacting with it, liking it, saying well done, including Demi Lovato, sending him love. But there was one person who did not agree with this essay, and they went to Tumblr, of all places, to say how much they disliked this essay, and that person was Dylan Sprouse. I couldn't find the full response to this because the post has been deleted from Tumblr, and no matter where I tried to look on the internet, I could only find quotes. So sadly, I don't have the full response. However, he begins with, I think it's bullshit that they were being robbed of a choice or creativity. If they wanted to, they could have told Disney no. Cole and I did this hundreds of times and we ended up alright. I found the pure rage of Dylan in this really quite funny. He kind of comes out of nowhere fuming that Joe Jonas had a different experience with Disney than he did. He also then goes on to say, what that article felt like was fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, still shame on you. It's all very dramatic for no reason. It seems like Dylan and Cole had the best experience with Disney out of all these people, but it just felt so rogue that he was so heated about this essay. I touched upon the new Disney child star when I was talking about Bella Thorne earlier, when social media became part of the play, which is when I kind of see the newer Disney child stars. But Disney has had some other really successful newer Disney child stars, such as Sabrina Carpenter, Olivia Rodrigo, and even Jake Paul. For some reason, Disney haven't exactly been able to make giant Disney stars again from themselves. It's mainly been from social media or after they've left the Disney show. Whether it's because of social media or their prime target audience has now grown up. With Disney Channel gone and now starting to make things with Disney Plus, does that mean we're gonna get a relaunch of the Disney child star? But still looking at the Disney Channel days, we have Olivia Rodrigo. She is one of Disney's biggest stars as of recent. However, she started at Disney Channel at 12 years old on a show called Bizarre-vark. This was way after my time, so I've never seen this show. I have no idea what it's about. But reading what Olivia said with her experience being on Disney Channel, it seems like not a lot has changed, saying, I had an identity crisis on steroids. Who the fuck am I? Who cares about me? How do I treat people? Most 14-year-olds aren't in a room with adults being like, so what's your brand? Imagine having to know what your brand is at the age of 14. Mine would be tragic. She was also on Disney Plus's show High School Musical, the series, which is such a guilty pleasure of mine, by the way. I know I'm not the right age range. I don't care. I really enjoy it. She still appears on really random episodes of the show, but music has very much become what she does with only one album. And her first single, Driving License, went 5 times platinum. Another singer from Disney is Sabrina Carpenter. I actually didn't know she was from Disney. I've just seen her in a few like Netflixy films and just assumed she was from there. But she was in Girl Meets World, which was the reboot for Boy Meets World. She's actually another actress who has only said nice things about being a Disney child star. She hasn't said anything about being overworked, feeling insecure, and I just love that for her, honestly. I also thought she was brand new to music, but it turns out she has 5 albums, and they were all under Disney's record label, and she's only just moved away from them. She's not quite at the same level as a lot of Disney stars, but I feel like she's definitely getting there. This new generation of Disney stars as well means that Disney themselves don't have as much control over their stars because of social media. It means that these actors, singers, etc. that are on Disney Channel can safely say that they have a career straight afterwards because of the immense following they have, meaning they are more likely to not need Disney and Disney need them. Disney would work on the same pattern as I said earlier. TV show, album, film to make them feel wanted, to make them feel like they're needed. But now with social media, they can do it all themselves. They can say what they want, they can be who they want, and actually talk to their fans personally, which the other Disney stars weren't able to do unless they literally saw them in the flesh or had a handwritten note. I honestly believe this is a good thing for Disney kids because it means that they're not being constantly controlled and they can just be themselves. I would love to say that the kids can finally just be kids, but in reality, with this line of work, with what they are doing, it does mean that they do grow up a lot faster than majority of kids. One of the most controversial yet relevant people to come from Disney was surprisingly Jake Paul. I remember finding out that he was a Disney kid and I was utterly confused because he just doesn't exude Disney kid behavior. Jake Paul was actually one of the main characters in Bizaardvark. I still don't know how to say it. But at the time that Jake was on Disney Channel, he also had a YouTube channel which had 9 million subscribers and very quickly became controversial and constantly having the police called him for his funny little pranks. And he is probably what Disney feared. And I mean feared would happen if they did not have control. And surprisingly, they mutually parted ways. And he did not return for the 3rd season of the show. Unlike other Disney kids though, he's somehow just not even associated with Disney, which I'm pretty sure Disney are very pleased about. But what does this mean for the future Disney star? Well, we currently have no idea. They're clearly capable of making new stars, but it's just not the same as the golden days. But do you think that Disney will try and remake that all again on Disney Plus, or do you think it's done? It's just done. Reading up on all these Disney child stars, even though I loved, and I mean loved and adored the shows, I do feel a little bit guilty because I was one of those people that would complain that they would do so many reruns of the same episodes, but looking into it, they were already overworked. They didn't need to make more episodes to make 13-year-old me happy. It seems that every Disney child star said that they were overworked or had self-confidence issues or just had too much pressure on them. Of course, this isn't just a Disney thing. So many Nickelodeon stars have been coming out as well recently about their experience there. If you want me to do a video on that, by the way, let me know and I can do. But these stars are calling out these companies now. They're 30 years old and they're saying, hey, this wasn't right, you know? With social media now, it makes it harder for companies to exploit their workers, whether they're adults or children. But also kids who get these huge opportunities at such young ages also need to have support from the companies that they are going to be working for, and way better rules around their hours, how much they can work, and not just dropped the second the show or the film is over. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I've been talking for 2 hours straight. I have no idea how long this video is, but thank you so much if you've watched this whole thing. I've worked really hard on this. It's taken me weeks to be able to make sure that it's perfect. And if you do, make sure to give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out and it lets you know you like these kind of videos and I can get on to do more commentary style videos for you guys. And if you have any ideas or anything you want to see, leave them down below in the comments and hit subscribe to make sure you don't miss the next one. But thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I feel like I've learned a lot researching into this, and I hope I've told you a few new things that you haven't heard about or known about before. I hope you enjoyed this video and I will hopefully see you again very soon.